Hi everyone, in this video we're gonna dive into Houdini and we're gonna create a couple meshes for our water projectile. Let me isolate what we'll be working on. First we're gonna create meshes for this. It's basically a simple sphere that I'm stretching in Unreal Engine. We're gonna have two UV sets and we're gonna add some vertex color just in case we need some additional control for our glow here at the front of it. And then we're just gonna create two additional meshes. It will be small droplets and large blobs that we're gonna use as a detail for that projectile. The last thing is the splashes, but we're gonna cover those on a separate video. Okay, so that's the water projectile, and we're gonna just create meshes in Houdini in this video. So I'm gonna start by bringing geometry node. I'm gonna change its name to projectile mesh. Dive inside, and I'm gonna start with sphere. I'm gonna change this to polygon. I'm gonna increase the frequency maybe up to 15 because I need this to be slightly more in terms of poly count, because I'm gonna create those waves on it using the world position offset in the game engine. And next I'm just gonna increase its scale to maybe 1.5, and I'm gonna bring the UV project. For this one I want my UVs to actually be on the UV channel 2, and I'm gonna change them to be polar. I'm just gonna dive into UV editor, make sure it's correct. So it looks okay. I'm just gonna get back to perspective and get another UV project. And this one's going to be orthographic because I need a side projection. I'm gonna pick Z and X plane and initialize again. Dive into UV editor just to make sure it looks okay, and it does. So next thing, I'm just gonna add some normals to it. And I'm gonna put maybe 180 here. And last bit, I'm gonna add the color gradient. So that'll be a labs color gradient. It's from the labs tool, so make sure you got the labs installed. And in here, I'm just gonna pick the Z axis and maybe flip it around as well. And I need a bit more black color here, so I'm just gonna move it slightly to maybe 0.9. And I think I'm gonna use this for the glow in the game engine. So I'm gonna mask my glow by vertex color and apply just a normal color, very intense emissive color to it. Last bit, I just wanna create a game engine scale, so transform, and I'm gonna multiply this by, let's go actually with 100. I'm gonna zoom out. And I'm gonna add a null to it, and that'll be my export node. I'm gonna select Shift L to tidy up this graph a bit, and I'm gonna use this for my projectile. So I've got the vertex color for the glow. Let me check the UVs as well. Okay, and the second UV channel is that one. Okay, so that's the projectile mesh. Next, let's create maybe a droplets and a large blob mesh. First, I'm gonna try droplets, and then I'm just gonna reuse the graph and create this large blob mesh for my projectile. Next, let's try to create this droplets mesh. So I'm gonna get another geometry. I'm gonna call this one droplets. Dive inside, and first I'm gonna try to get a just a default sphere without any changes. I'm gonna press space and F while hovering in my viewport to zoom back in. Next, I'm gonna turn that into volume using ISO offset. I'm gonna add a bit more sampling to it, maybe 30 or even 50 maybe. Okay, disable grid. So I think you're gonna struggle to see it. And so let me maybe change it background to dark. Cool. So now we've got this volume. I'm gonna scatter some points on it. 1000 maybe. Let's get just 7. Because obviously 1000 was too many, and I just need a couple so I can put some spheres on it. So, but first I'm gonna get the attribute randomize, and in here I'm gonna use the p scale because I want a random p scale, get the dimensions to just 1 and maybe get the random number between 0.5 and 1. And because I'll be copying that system later on, I'm gonna create another randomizer. So that will be attribute randomize, and here I need 4 dimensions. I'm gonna put orient here. We can't see it right now for the on the sphere because we're gonna be creating a simple sphere, so it doesn't matter its rotation because this is a random rotation orient, and it operates with 4 dimensions. So there'll be a vector 4. And here I'm just gonna get a sphere. I'm gonna get a mountain. And actually let me do copy 2 points. And let me scale this back down so we can see, hopefully, and they got slightly different rotations, exactly what we want. And next I'm gonna actually create VDB from polygons. For the voxel size, I'm just gonna keep it 1 for now. Next I'm gonna use VDB smooth, SDF, and in here I'm gonna use mean curvature flow with maybe 2 iterations, and I think we need a bit more resolution here, so I'm just gonna change it to maybe 2, but that's gonna increase, and maybe 0.5. Okay. And in here, what I want from those droplets, I want some of them to be connected. So I'm gonna get back to my sphere and start increasing its size maybe to 0.5. I think 0.5 might be a little bit too much, maybe 0.4. As you can see, some of them are actually connected, which is cool. I'm gonna go to my scatter and pick a slightly different seed, something that looks a little bit more interesting. So I quite like this. You can see some of them are connected, but they're kind of connected in the same way. So I'm just gonna keep going with my seed. Okay, almost there. I'm just gonna use this. I quite like some of them are connected and others are separate, so I'm just gonna use that one. You feel free to experiment. Maybe you wanna slightly more of them, so you can put 8 maybe, and it's gonna create a bit more interesting shapes for you. I'm gonna go with 7. And I want to convert that back, so that'll be convert VDB. And I wanna convert it back to polygons. I'm gonna remesh them. So remesh. I'm gonna put 0.1 here, maybe 0.05. So we get a bit more accurate geometry. And next, I'm just gonna use poly reduce because I'll be spawning a lot of those and I don't want them to be high poly. So in here, maybe 50% or even less, maybe 20%. And I think that should be enough. Next, I'm just gonna use normals. Actually, I'm gonna use the lab soften normals, 180. And it's time to create some UVs. So first one's gonna to be UV project. That will be on UV2, and I want this to be a side projection. So let's navigate to my UV viewport. It looks like a side projection. I'm gonna try different planes to see if I could get a slightly better projection. I think I'm just gonna stick with the best plane because the side projection is all I need. Okay, next let's create maybe auto UVs from labs because I need this to be unwrapped as well, and Let me change. Okay, so this is on UV2, perfect, and that's going to be UV default. Let's just preview my UVs now. I think there's a little bit too many islands. So I'm gonna try to minimize that. I think going to cluster might work, but every time I'm going to cluster, it kind of shuts down and crashes Houdini. So I'm gonna try rotation 180, and actually, let me try the merge threshold. I'm gonna increase this, maybe 0.8, and maybe grain tolerance as well, because I want just a few islands, not too many. Okay, so something like this looks okay to me, so 0.3 here. And I'm just gonna keep it on UV channel default. All right, next I'm gonna go back here, and sometimes you get like a very small meshes. So it might be worth using labs delete small parts. As you can see, that one disappeared, so I'm just gonna lower the number to maybe 0.05, but again, because of VDB, sometimes you get a very tiny mesh that you can't see, but it's there. So I'm just gonna doing some cleanup with the delete small parts. Next, I'm gonna use transform just to increase this to a game engine scale, and that will be maybe 50. Space and F while hovering on the viewport to frame it. I'm gonna enable my grid. As you can see, it's all over the place, so I'm just gonna use axis, match axis. Actually, it's not match axis. Let me check. It might be actually axis align. So I can position it in the center, so I could get a slightly better pivot point. And last one will be a null for the export. Okay, feel free to play with the poly count. I think this is fairly low poly, so I'm just gonna stick with it. However, you feel free to go maybe to poly reduce and increase it maybe to 50% to get slightly better geometry. But I think because it will be so small on the screen, I think that kind of poly count is okay. I'm gonna go back now, copy the whole system, paste it, hide the droplets, and I'm gonna call this one Blob Mesh. Dive inside, and next let's try to modify it and create a blob mesh for our water projectile. So I think you can just use maybe sphere and mount it and get similar results. However, I already got the setup and I was experimented with it, and I think just modifying it does the job for me. So I'm gonna go to copy to points, space F to frame it, and actually I'm gonna select maybe VDB smooth, and I'm gonna start increasing the size of it, maybe set it up to 1. As you can see, it creates this kind of blob mesh for me. I'm gonna just go through all of those, make sure it looks okay. I think I might have problem with the UV project, so let's go into the UVs, and I'm gonna initialize again just to make sure it fits into the 0 to 1 space. I'm gonna preview my auto UVs as well. It looks okay, so I'm not gonna do anything. And I think that's it. If you wanna modify it, obviously you can go to poly reduce, increase this slightly, and also you can go to scatter, change the global seed to get a slightly different mesh in case you need more than one. Okay, I'm just gonna use this to blend between the meshes in Unreal Engine, just to get a nice transition from my projectile mesh into the small tiny little droplets that will be at the end of it. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this one. Again, something very simple, but hopefully you can use it in your projects. All right, thank you so much for watching.